This episode is brought to you by Netflix. Most Valuable Promotions and Netflix are hosting a blockbuster triple headliner Saturday, May 16th. Ronda Rousey returns to face fellow women's MMA pioneer Gina Carano in the main event. Plus co-mains Nate Diaz versus Mike Perry. And the best heavyweight in the world, Francis Ngannou versus Felipe Lins. Watch Ronda Rousey versus Gina Carano, live only on Netflix. Saturday, May 16th at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 6 p.m. Pacific Time.
Study
and play come together on a Windows 11 PC.
And for a limited time, college students get
the best of both worlds.
Get the Unreal College Deal. Everything you need to study and play with select Windows 11 PCs. Eligible students get a year of Microsoft 365 Premium and a year of Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with a custom color Xbox wireless controller. Learn more at windows.com/student offer. While supplies last. Ends June 30th. Terms at aka.ms/collegepc.
Get business done with the new American Express Graphite Business Cash Unlimited card. With unlimited 2% cash back on all eligible purchases. Unlimited 5% cash back on flights and prepaid hotels booked through American Express Travel Online. And a flexible spending capacity that can grow with your business. You'll have the confidence to keep building. Apply today and earn a welcome offer of $1,500 cash back after you spend $50,000 in qualifying purchases on your new card within the first 6 months of card membership. Terms apply. Learn more at go.amex/graphite.
Hello there, Stanley Carr here. You know, I love collecting music and sports memorabilia. Want to know where you can find some? I'll tell you. Go to oldglory.com. This website features one-of-a-kind apparel from your favorite sports teams and musical artists. And I can help you get 15% off of all items. Use the code WWH135. Enjoy the episode.
Welcome to Wrestling with Heart, a podcast looking at pro wrestlers giving back to their community. Join me, Stanley Carr, as I interview wrestling's hottest names who use their platforms as entertainers to raise awareness and do community service.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Wrestling with Heart. This is a show where we talk with professional wrestlers and professional wrestling personalities about their lives in and outside of the ring, as well as doing acts of charity, community service, volunteering, and spreading positivity. We're always about the positive vibes here on the show. Before I introduce my guest today, I want to give a chance to plug my first book here, Champions for a Cause Volume 1, which is now out in paperback. You can get it on Amazon for $15. Champions for a Cause Volume 1. It contains a collection of interviews of some of our past guests, ranging from WWE talents to independent stars. So you might be interested if you want to know more about Wrestling with Heart and what we're all about. Check out Champions for a Cause. Do not miss out on this incredible opportunity. Now, we've got a very special guest with us here today. Former WWE, Impact, and NWA star, the Masterpiece, Chris Masters is here. Welcome, Chris, to Wrestling with Heart.
It's good to be here. Good to be here. I'm happy we can make this work and look forward to having a chat.
My pleasure is all mine. Now, you're from Los Angeles, California, big wrestling fan. What can you tell me about your first experiences watching professional wrestling?
I came up in the era where when you were came up around my era as a kid, you fell under either the Ultimate Warrior or Hulk Hogan. You were one of the, you were the Hogan guy or Warrior guy. My friend actually down the street was a Hogan guy, and I was always kind of the Ultimate Warrior is the guy who got me watching wrestling. I just found his look and character, music, everything just so intriguing, so cool as a kid. And I mean, it's still cool even as an adult, to be honest, but specifically as a kid, I mean, he was a living, walking, breathing superhero, essentially. So, my earliest memories would probably be of that, like right after WrestleMania 6. And, honestly, my earliest memory that stands out to me is a bad one. It was actually when he lost the title to Slaughter. And how devastated I was by that. But I remember how awesome the match was. It was so action-packed. And I watched it again recently, and Sergeant Slaughter just does not get enough credit for being a guy that size. And the way he would bump and feed and cover the ring, I mean, there's nobody else like that. Go back and watch that match with Warrior. Just watch Slaughter's selling. And again, he's much bigger, but he's selling with the grace and all that of a Ric Flair, of a Shawn. I mean, up there with the top of the top.
I feel like Sergeant Slaughter is regarded as one of the best baby faces of all time just because of his background and his persona when he was wrestling. But I feel like his heel work is kind of underrated, don't you think?
Well, yeah, part of it is because the controversy of the time in the Iraq War, obviously. But again, I'm just saying, if you take all that out of it, you just watch the way he worked. It's almost crazy that he didn't work heel his whole career. Because, I mean, again, the guy was taking bumps for his size. And he was doing it in a way that psychologically made sense. It wasn't like he was just flying around the ring or anything. So again, I was actually, it's funny because I was at WrestleCon, and I met up with a lot of people I haven't seen in a long time, but I specifically wanted to find Slaughter to give him his flowers on that, because I don't think I've ever told him that, or well, I know I've never told him that, but like then again, it's been so long, I needed a bit of a refresher to be like, yo, what the hell? Like, you are just, they don't talk about it enough.
Ultimate Warrior was really one of those flashy characters, just had the colorful costumes and the outfits and everything, really just appealed.
And the face paint.
The face paint.
Well, I think, and that was a thing for me. Like, some guys kind of fall in love with the mask guys. I think early on in my wrestling fandom, the face painted guys intrigued me. I mean, that kind of wore away after a couple of years, I think, but I just can remember that, Warrior, Demolition, and, I know it was the Legion of Doom, but I'm trying to think if there was somebody else. I don't know. I know Demolition and Warrior. I was intrigued by the face painted guys for whatever reason,
Were you a big Papa Shango fan?
No, no, I wasn't, but I did buy into the whole thing when he cursed or whatever. He did the whatever they call that. Warrior started throwing up. He put a curse on him. I sound like a Danhausen, but whatever you call it, whatever they do, the
voodoo powers.
Yeah, exactly, the voodoo powers, whatever, Ouija board, whatever the hell. But yeah, so I bought into that thing. But I don't know. I just always, now that you mention it, another thing that really stands out, because again, it was early in my fandom, but I can say this for all of my fandom of all time. There's no crazier I ever went at any point in my fandom than when the Ultimate Warrior came back at WrestleMania 8. And I bring that up because you brought up Papa Shango and we're on him. And I remember the music playing and I remember him running. I just remember getting up and I was jumping and screaming around. Because as a kid, you don't know we didn't have the internet either. And we just had no idea. Like, I would just be kind of resentful because he would just leave. And then, like, where the heck is he? Where the heck is he? Now, but then I was so excited that he came back. But then, as you know, he ended up leaving again. And, shortly thereafter, I took my lapse fandom kind of couple years where I kind of stopped paying attention. But that wasn't until I also, Shawn Michaels, once he became singles. And again, I think Warrior was gone. Was Warrior gone again? Well, I guess Warrior just came back for that brief time. But like Shawn Michaels as a heel right when he went singles, like I liked him from the very get-go. You know what I mean? Like it was the persona. But again, to go back to the athletic heel, overselling, covering the ring, keeping the action flowing. I mean, I love that stuff. So like that was literally my last kind of memory before I took a couple years. I don't know what I was doing. Just, you're a kid and you start paying attention to different stuff. So I just remember my last memories kind of being, the Warrior came back, loving Shawn Michaels and the whole sexy boy thing, but then eventually just kind of, not paying attention after a certain point.
At what age did you decide, I want to give this a shot? How do I get into professional wrestling?
Actually, wait, just to go back. Actually, I do remember it was actually Shawn winning the belt from Bulldog. There was a Saturday night main event. And that's one of the last kind of true memories I have until like I got back into it a few years later. But anyways, what was that question you just asked?
At what point did you decide, I want to give this a shot? How do I get into wrestling? How do I become a wrestler?
Okay, well, so I took my couple years off and I picked up my fandom again. I bought into the Shawn Michaels concussion thing. I was like, oh, here's the guy I liked. What's going on? He has a concussion. he might not wrestle again. And it was interesting to me. I was like, what? And then so I watched the Rumble, he wins it. So I'm already just kind of like, oh, like supporting him obviously, but I'm also like, oh my God, this guy's career was supposed to be over. Now he's winning the Rumble, and now he's going on to WrestleMania. And so the reason I bring that up is because then the Iron Man match came in. I feel like after the Iron Man match, I was now a lifer because the whole boy, I don't know. For me, watching Sean go from a tag team wrestler to the Intercontinental, and then to come take a hiatus and come back, and now see that guy on the top of the top, like winning the Rumble, going to WrestleMania, now becoming the world champion. It was just so inspiring, man. And it was just like, it just really just ingrained my fandom for life and made it, I didn't know I was going to be a wrestler yet. I just know that like there was no looking back. I was back in, and there was no looking back. I love pro wrestling, and it's in my blood now. And so, maybe a couple of years later, let's see, that was 96. So more than a couple of years, because we're talking about maybe it was maybe around 99 or the year 2000. But I just remember in high school, there's just being a day where all of a sudden they were kind of like asking, like, what do you want to do, to everybody. And to me, it just kind of, I was just obsessed with wrestling. Everything was wrestling. I was reading wrestling magazines. I was attacking my friends in the hallways and stuff. Like, I always tell people, like, because people always come to me about the Masterlock, and they tell me about all the trouble they get into with it back in the day, right? And I'm like, dude, I actually totally get it. I didn't think about it at the time, but like, if I was a fan and I was watching like me doing the challenge and all that, and I was in high school, I for sure would have been sneaking up on my friends and putting the Masterlock on them and trying to challenge them to get out in front of everybody. And part of it is because it was so easy. It's such a simple move, but it's legit. And so, anyways, yeah, man, I just basically, I don't know, all signs pointed to wrestling. And then like most kids, I did start doing some backyard wrestling for a while, which I really got into. And then, long story short, funny thing is what happened is and I give my mom a lot of props for this, is she saw a tape of what we were doing in the backyard wrestling. And I think specifically in this match, I was taking like a backdrop off of a ladder onto like grass, but solid grass ground. And I think she was just so like freaked out by what she saw that she was like, you know what, if you're going to do this crazy ish, then let's have you go to school and just get trained to do it right and professionally. And so that is kind of actually what started, is she wanted me to stop the backyard wrestling and just go to school for it. Because we were already aware at that point of UPW, which was my friend had started going there before me, and that was the school that obviously ultimately had Cena and all kinds of guys came out of there. But yeah, I just remember her kind of saying that, and then every Saturday and Sunday, us driving from LA to Huntington Beach to do these practices. And John Cena started right essentially at the same time, maybe even the same day, honestly. Like, that's how close we were in terms of our starting point. And yeah, so
I'd imagine when you're trying to learn these moves for the first time, like actually stepping into a ring, it's one thing to do it with your friends. It's another thing to actually do this and learn this through the system. Walk me through the process of learning from your trainers and the process to be a professional wrestler.
Well, it was rough initially because first of all, I was so young. I was maybe 16 years old, and I had started working out, but I also was like eating like crazy because I was so skinny initially. And somebody kind of, as a tip, told me like, that you should just eat as much as you can when you're bulking, which is true through sense. But I took that really to a whole nother level. And so, I found that when I was doing these wrestling practices, I was much heavier than my body wasn't ready to carry. And so it was definitely hampering me on a lot of because I was never a bad athlete by any means. You know what I mean? I was always at least a moderate to decent athlete on just basic stuff. You know what I mean? And so I just found I was having a lot of trouble with simple stuff, man. Like, we would have a drill where you would do 2 forward rolls, and then you would grab the top rope in the corner and you would jump out. and then you jump back in, and then you do like 2 rolls and something else. But my whole point is, like, I was at a point where making that jump was a nightmare because every week, I was, again, carrying more weight than my body, trying to bulk and all that. And so, like, it would be really hard for me to clear that top rope. And so even just doing stuff like that, I ended up getting hurt because I did a leapfrog, funny enough, just like kind of we're talking about here. And I didn't clear the guy, and I kind of slid off his back and I ended up fracturing my ankle. So, it took me a while to realize it was fractured. It just didn't get better. And then ultimately, I realized it was fractured. I had to go in, and then I had surgery, which was a real simple surgery. But it was kind of a wake-up call to me, too, that maybe, like, what I was doing, this is the right direction, but the timing is off. Like, I'm too young. And I got to see kind of where the, Cena was already, like, I mean, Cena never looked better than that point, like, physically. He was ridiculous. And there was another guy named Basil, too. And so just by being there that few months, I realized, I might have made some improvement for me, but I'm still I got a lot of work to do. And again, just because I couldn't even do basic athletic stuff like that because I was trying to put on so much weight. So, yeah, it was all difficult. I got hurt. And, one thing that was cool though, and, because we might not get back to this part, but I remember when I came back to wrestling, maybe 2.5 years later, and now I'm in shape. I basically look like Chris Masters now. But I remember it being a huge, and like this might inspire some people who hear it too, honestly, because little stuff like this, people can have difficulty with. But like my big thing coming back was, can I clear that jump over the top rope and jump back in? And so when I came back, that was a huge thing. But like just in my mind, I didn't tell anybody. But it was so cool because after all that time, I'd come back and I was leaner. My body was built to carry the size now, right? And so I remember I went to do that jump, and man, I cleared it like by 2 feet, man. And it was just like such a personal victory. Like, man, I knew like I wasn't just this, because you start feeling real lame not being able to do basic stuff like that. And, you'll tend to question yourself. So once I came back and was able to do it, I was just relieved. I was like, okay, like I was just too damn heavy at that point.
Yeah, you had to like bet on yourself so you could be able to do it with ease.
Yep. And I took a couple of years off, man, and I just obsessed about bodybuilding, but only for the goal of pro wrestling, which is where a lot of people got mixed up, and a lot of it was because of me. But a lot of people kind of just thought I was like a body guy or bodybuilder turned wrestler. But no, it was like, and I think I said something that kind of led people in that direction. But honestly, like you can tell through my conversation with you, like no, pro wrestling was always my thing. I only decided to start bodybuilding once I started to wrestle, because I still remember in the 9th grade of high school, I had first period weightlifting. And I didn't do nothing. I didn't even do one rep. And I just looked around and I see the guys benching, and I didn't even get it. Like I was like, why would anybody want to get up and do all this stuff? Like at that time too, it's like 8 a.m. So it just made it's just funny how it made absolutely no sense to me. And then you fast forward to who I became and what it just shows you how different. And that was from 9th grade to maybe the 11th grade. We're talking 2 years.
As a kid, I remember I used to do like your entrance where you go,
yeah,
and it's like it takes me back. You were watching that earlier. You make your WWE debut. It's 2005. You're wrestling Stevie Richards. Walk me through that day. Did you have butterflies? Were you nervous? Were you excited to finally get that?
Well, you might have not heard this. A few people probably heard this at some point or another. But basically, so Michael Jordan, they always talk about the flu game he had, right? But recently we found out that the flu game was actually food poisoning. And right when I heard that, I related so much, because what happened is on my debut day on Raw, man, the night before, I had eaten a turkey wrap at a gas station and not thought much of it. I was just really hungry. We were in the middle of nowhere. And then the next day, man, I went down to breakfast and I went to take a bite of breakfast, and I had no appetite, which was really weird, man, because I was like, such a big boy, especially around that time. And like, I never didn't have an appetite. So, it was a very odd occurrence. So, we tried to carry it through our day. I think from what I remember, we went to go tanning. I think I was with Nova, Simon Dean, and I remember just being on our way to the tanning bed, and I think I had to like run and go to row up. And so now I was getting signs that something was really wrong. And as the day proceeded, it just got worse and worse. And like, yeah, I was basically, again, long story short, it was probably the sickest I've ever been in my life. It was horrible food poisoning, man, on the worst possible day. This is my dream, the biggest day of my life. Think about it based on just kind of what I've told you already. Like you can tell that my whole life has built to this moment, and now I'm facing it, and I'm sick as a like sicker than I've ever been. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, that part was brutal, man. I was just spending the whole day trying to get better, or at least a little bit better than I was. Which I got a little bit better, but I was never okay, man. And there was no not going out. I mean, this was supposed to be my unveiling. And to make things worse, as most people know, then, we get to the match. And which, by the way, by this point, I've probably lost 10 pounds, and not in a good way, because there's times where you can lose weight like that and you'll just look shredded. But I think with me, I was so sick and I couldn't really take in anything. Like even at certain points, even a few sips of liquid would just come up. So, I just lost 10 pounds and not necessarily a good way. Like it was just too much. So, it kind of deflated me. It's not something people would notice, but it's something I would, and also because they just built it up as an unveiling. So much was centered around looking as big and impressive as possible. And so that wasn't even possible in itself there. And then, of course, I broke Stevie's face with the misplaced Polish hammer just to put the exclamation point on a horrible, horrible snake bit day for my debut, man. Like, yeah, I couldn't have, honestly, I don't think it could have gone any worse. And I was able to dig myself out of it. And like when I came to the back, Stevie was super angry. I mean, he was yelling and everything, but I don't fault him at all. You know what I mean? Like that company treated him so unfairly, and I don't blame him at all. And I felt so terrible about doing it to him, and I just knew, just through the little bit that I learned about just, being a fan and now being in the business, I was like, oof, this is bad. And like now I can't hurt anybody from this point, because I really just kind of, filled that whole card right there. Like if I hurt somebody else, I'm going to, the only thing worse than working with a bad worker is working with a big, reckless worker. Nobody wants to work with those guys. And so I just knew, I was like, man, I got to make sure I don't hurt anybody else. That's it. And that's it. And like, whenever I talk about this, I always point out too that I'm proud to say, man, 20 years later, I didn't hurt anybody else. Like anytime there's people who've gotten hurt in matches with me, but it was nothing of my, they were running and they planted wrong or whatever. You know what I mean? It was always stuff that wasn't anything that I had control over or did. So yeah, I'm proud of that.
It's a hard business. It really is. And you take so much punishment, take so many risks, and you really have to work with your body to make sure that you're executing the moves correctly. You're working with your partner to make sure that you're doing everything safely as possible. So did you guys ever patch things up with each other? Did you ever reconcile with Stevie years later?
Oh, yeah. Stevie knows. I think Stevie, I apologize to Stevie every time I saw him for maybe, like, I still probably apologize to him this day. Literally every time I saw him from that point. I think it something that happens and you're going to be emotional and mad. And again, especially when you consider the context of the way that company was effing with that dude, which I didn't even know all of that at the time. Like, I guess I might have picked up on a little bit of it, but I didn't know the extent of it, because I listen to Stevie's podcast now and you hear him talk about that time, and it's just, man, it's really gross, a lot of the stuff you hear. And even like, I remember around that time, Arn had, and I didn't know this at the time, I only learned this through watching his pod, that Arn said at one point, it's only Stevie. That's the type of, like, I didn't hear that at the time, but man, that's just a sickening sentiment right there. Like, that's not the kind of company I would ever want to be a part of, honestly. I'm not saying they're like that now, and I'm not even demonizing Arn, because I love Arn. I think he's one of the best agents I've ever had, maybe one of the or producers, probably maybe the best, him and Finley. But just that whole treatment of a guy like Stevie, just because he's not a main event player or something like that, the dehumanizing of a guy like is ridiculous. You know what I mean? And there's a lot of those old school guys who would do stuff like that. Ric Flair, another one.
Let's talk about the Masterlock. You talked a little bit about it earlier. It's a variation on the full Nelson maneuver. Who came up with the idea of using that kind of finisher, and how were you able to kind of make it your own?
Well, that was a perfect segue actually then, because I'm pretty sure, I don't know for certain who exactly it was, but I know it was either Arn and Triple H, or maybe even again Finley, or you know what I mean? Because I don't know if maybe they all came up with it, but I think there was a point where they realized that the full Nelson hadn't been used in quite a while, and again, it's such a legit hold. I mean, it honestly is. I mean, and it can be used in multiple ways. Again, it's a beautiful restraint hold, just to hold a guy, which I did a lot as a bouncer and security guard before I entered wrestling, but also obviously as an offensive weapon, which the only difference is you're basically putting some torque on the neck and you're cutting off blood flow, and the guy will start turning purple and pass out. And so, I just think it was it was the right time to bring it back. I was the right guy. If you're going to bring that back, you want somebody who's physically very impressive, not just impressive, but very impressive. So I fell under that bracket. And I questioned it at first because, again, being a fan, you just know that there's been so many cool finishes and it's so basic. It's so basic. But again, I was too young, and still, even as a fan, it doesn't mean you come into the business and you understand all the, it helps. It definitely helps to be have watched it as opposed to somebody who's never watched it. But still, it doesn't mean that you're going to catch on to everything quicker. You know what I mean? There's still stuff that you're going to have to, kind of figure out. And what I hadn't figured out there is just, again, how it being a basic hold, it can be part of the strength of it. You know what I mean? As long, it's got to be a guy that looks like me doing it on top of it. And then it's got to be presented right. And it was.
It's got to be believable.
Yes, exactly. And so, man, I still do it. I mean, I did a shoot Masterlock challenge at WrestleCon. I posted it on my Instagram. It's already gotten 3.5 million views. So, people still react to it, man. It definitely made an impression on people. And it's really cool to have kind of people tell me that, because it wasn't a huge, long, multi-year run there either. But you can tell that, the time I had up there at least made a good impact, and people kind of look back at that ruthless aggression era with, a lot of, they're very fond of it when you compare it to what's kind of gone down since.
You were there at a time where you had so many people on the roster. You had Cena, you had Orton, you had Batista, Rey Mysterio, Triple H, The Undertaker, Shawn Michaels, Kurt Angle, just a who's who of talent that were around. And you got to really work with a lot of these guys, and there were periods where you even got to compete for championships. Were there plans to get a title run at some point for you? Did you?
Yeah, I've talked about. I mean, there were certain points where I was supposed to win every title. I mean, I was supposed to win the tags with Carly, and that got switched the day before, WrestleMania. So, because we had been told for a while that we were going to be going over in that match and being the tag champs. And then, the Intercontinental title situation came up maybe a year later. And it was essentially because I had failed a drug test, and they had intervention with me. And, they had kind of laid it out for me that they were going to originally have me winning the title, which it made a lot of sense to me when you looked at what was happening. They ended up having a four-way where Shelton ended up winning it. And, not that Shelton's not a great IC champ, it's just they weren't doing anything with Shelton at that point, so it was very out of nowhere, his win. And this was in Vegas, actually, too. So just now that I remember. So, yeah, I messed that one up, that could have potentially been mine. And then also, I mean, Vince was playing around with the idea of making me the youngest champion for a brief stint there, but I think John Cena probably gave me the thumbs down at some point, because we didn't mix too well for, basically all of my career. I mean, we had our moments where we were okay, but I don't know. It was just, it was much easier for me to work the guys that, Sean had and Rick and all those guys had so many years. Like they were such great leaders. And John Cena was definitely over as hell. And he was the Hulk Hogan of this generation. But, just still like work-wise with him and me, there was no true great leader in the ring. You know what I mean? Just because, again, you don't have neither one of us were a Shawn Michaels or a Triple H or a Bret Hart or anything like that. So, I think sometimes that kind of hurt our chemistry. And also looking back in it now too, because John Cena is OCD, like big time. Like seriously, I don't think I realized at the time, but he's so OCD and he would try to control too much of the match. Like he would try to control your offense and stuff and call that. And, if you know anything about working, that's not a great way to work because, pro wrestling is much better when it's just reacting to what's happening rather than having somebody tell you to do something and just, doing it as planned, essentially. You know what I mean? So sometimes it's good to freelance and just react.
Who would you say have been some of your favorite opponents that you've gotten to work against over the years?
I've had a lot of fun with Carlito.
When you need to build up your team to handle the growing chaos at work, use Indeed Sponsored Jobs. It gives your job post the boost it needs to be seen and helps reach people with the right skills, certifications, and more. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all your boxes. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. That's Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need a hiring hero? This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs.
We've come up with a lot of stupid spots and a lot of good comedy stuff. But Drew McIntyre is another one. Like every Drew McIntyre match I had was amazing. And I can only imagine what we would do in this day and age now with, he's even better now. And I believe I'm even better probably at this point. And I'd like to give a lot of credit to Val Venus too, because I worked him a ton when I first got on the road with WWE on all the live events, and he really kind of helped coach me up and let me call the matches. And it was a lot of fun because we just got to a point where, again, you work a guy enough times and you don't really need to come in and plan the whole match A to Z. You can kind of go out there and do some of your stuff kind of when you choose to do it in there and kind of call it on the fly, or maybe you choose not to do it and you do something different, so a lot of credit to him. And then I'm trying to think of who else stands out. I know there's somebody I'm forgetting, but I think Drew McIntyre, Carlito, Shawn Michaels, Val Venus. Shawn, obviously, I got to work Shawn on, it wasn't just the TV stuff. We worked a ton of live events. So I have a lot of memories of working with Shawn on those and different situations and stuff like that. So, yeah. And then, I guess, I don't know. There's different, I look at it different ways. Like, I was so fired up to work guys like Shawn, Flair, even Triple H, that it was like a different kind of, excitement and fun than the guys who again were more my peers, being Carlito and Drew McIntyre and whatnot. I think I was just kind of happy that I came in when I did and I was able to work with those guys. And I think that's what made the Ruthless Aggression era probably pretty darn good, is the writing was still good and it wasn't PG yet. It was still edgy, but you had a good mix too of guys that were already established with a ton of equity, and just a sprinkle of new guys, being me and Muhammad Hassan and, whoever else. There was more, but Rene Dupree and whatnot.
Yeah, there was definitely a lot of familiarity because you just left the Attitude Era. You still had some of those guys kind of lingering around, but you got all these other guys coming in, and you had the guys from WCW that were around as well. So you had like a good mix of talents, and being able to work with those guys. Really, I feel like that was a very underrated period of wrestling.
Well, I don't know if it's underrated anymore, honestly, because I think it was for a while, but then I think there's a point where we've had the PG era, for so long, and now you have the ruthless depression era, which so I think people now look at it, and I think it gets a lot more props. I think you know you got the attitude era, you got the golden era, and you got the ruthless aggression era, pretty much. I mean, like, I love the new generation too, but that was just because like I was a kid and coming into it when, I don't think people look at that as favorably, mainly because it was just so kind of goofy and the gimmicks were so dumb and all of that stuff. It was really a kind of a transitioning year or transitioning years there.
Would you say that's your favorite era of all time?
The new generation? No, I always put it like this. My favorite year of pro wrestling as a fan is 1997. So, and 1997 was kind of the prelude to the Attitude Era, but like we were already out of the new generation, kind of, I think, or you know what I mean? We were like transitioning from
on
new
the
generation.
Cusp. On the cusp.
Yeah, and like the thing is though, is I feel like, man, that year, if you look back on it, it was so, and even on the WCW side, because you had the outsiders and that people were buying into that was WWF versus WCW. But I mean, I was always a WWF guy, and and again, Sean was my guy, so I stayed watching there. But Brett as a heel, freaking amazing. Transitioning Stone Cold, like Stone Cold really becoming the man, amazing. Everything he did that year, amazing. The match with Brett, WrestleMania, amazing. And then even Sean, like, he didn't wrestle the whole year, granted, but like, I think his peak of his whole career was probably that later 4 months in terms of like, just his athleticism and the chip on his shoulder and all that stuff. Because, Sean coming back was every bit as good. He wasn't as athletic, but he was still just as good. But he just he didn't have the chip on his shoulder. And so, you lose a little bit of the attitude and stuff with that.
Well, it seems like it was definitely a full circle moment for you to be in the ring with Shawn Michaels, because here's somebody you kind of grew up watching, looked up to him, loved his style, and now you're in the ring with him, stepping toe to toe. I'd imagine like, wow, I've made it here.
Yeah, I was, I just didn't want to have a bad match with him on pay-per-view. I was super worried about that because basically every pay-per-view match he's ever had was good. And so I know that would just be something I would really have never forgiven myself over if like I was one of the guys that had a bad match with him. So, I was really relieved it came out as well as it did. I mean, I definitely was working well beyond my years there. Of course, Sean is the best to ever do it. So, but like, I had to pull my own, man. And I know that from the minute I started working Sean, it was easy. Like we worked at a live event and I didn't feel like it was my best work, but I remember Sean saying, if that's the worst you got, then we're going to be all right. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. I mean, I got him at the right time, but yeah, just to go back, 1997, man, that was my year. Do you have a favorite year? I imagine you're younger, so I imagine you're like, when was your peak fandom, would you say? Or are we in your peak fandom?
Well, I feel like around the time you were around WWE, like that 2005, 2006.
Yes, I work so many guys on the indies now who are in their mid-20s, late 20s, who their first, like I'm one of their earliest memories. And it's fun to work these guys because, I mean, they're so super respectful. Like they just, and I get it because when I don't know, just when you break into wrestling and you're around the guys that you remember from when you first started watching, you can't help but a little part of you goes to your childhood a little bit. So
yeah.
A lot of them will do that with me, and it's fun. But I try to get them to get over that so that we can actually wrestle and like have a good match where they're not letting that take over like, oh my God, I'm working Chris Masters. Like, the best thing they can do is try to, get over that fact. Yeah, it's cool and everything. But now let's, I like, cause when I was working with those guys, I was still every bit the fan of them. But like what always weighed in my mind as they were coming out was like, I want their respect. And that's what makes you snap out of the fandom. And it makes you snap into like, I'm Chris Masters here and I'm here to compete against Ric Flair. I'm here to compete against Shawn Michaels, whoever.
Yeah, it's cool to geek out and everything, but you got to be professional. You got to go out there and really put on an amazing performance so that you can have more of those moments in the future. So, who would you say are people on the independents that you really enjoy working with right now?
Oh man, well I got to give some love to Joey Janela because I got booked for the GCW LA show a few months ago, and they booked me against Joey, and man, he was just. And I knew right from the lockup, like we locked up, and he just, by the way he felt, I could tell him like, oh, this guy, we're gonna probably have a good match here, a really good match. Because again, I work with a lot of guys who are younger, like we were just talking about, and you can tell a lot about a guy in a lockup. When they lock up real stiff, they're nervous or they're just green, or sometimes they lock up like a wet noodle, and they're just, they're not giving you enough. And so, and then with some guys, it feels just right. And I remember Ric Flair used to use that as a gauge all the time. And, I wouldn't really understand, like, how can you tell all you need to know by a lockup? I just didn't get it. But it's really, I think, because of just feeling them like that. It's like, you can feel how your dancing partner is going to move with you or not move with you, So, what was your question? I'm sorry.
Guys that you're working against on the independent scene right now.
Yeah. So Joey Janela, I always give love to Chris Travis, although he's passed away. He was a British wrestler that I had like 3 matches with that were amazing, and he would be doing big things in the business right now if unfortunately he didn't pass when he did, because like he was around the time when a lot of guys, like there's a lot of guys that are getting opportunities in the business now that wouldn't have back in like my early time or 2010. And he was still he was a good athletic guy, but he was still kind of not given, he wasn't given the looks he should have been. And I feel like if he was around longer, he would have eventually, like they would have recognized his talent. But I'm trying to think of who else, because it's always, it's always a different guy every week. I mean, some guys I just love on the indies, like I love Big Ben Bishop, but I was, trying to get him to slow down in the ring a little bit, but then I guess at WWE they were telling him to speed up, so I don't know what to say about that. But I don't know. I just Joey Janela mainly, and again, it might be recency bias, but it's just because I had so much fun working with him, and the GCW crowd loved it, and it was a very, it was a really important match to me that one go well, just because I felt like I needed some buzz to remind people, like, hey, I'm still out here and I can go. And, I feel like it accomplished just that. There was a lot of, I don't read Chris Masters a lot on Twitter. I don't type it on there, but every once in a while I'll check. And I checked out, in the couple of days after that match, and it was like really nice to hear all the positive stuff. I was like, he's cool. But I don't suggest doing that for, like, I won't, like, even when I did the Chris Van Vliet interview, like, I still haven't even bothered with the YouTube comments. I think people can drive themselves crazy by watching their stuff and then going through all the comments. Like, not to say you can't do it on like Instagram or something, but if you're going on your YouTube stuff and you're reading, I mean, you might drive yourself crazy, with different, what I mean? Honestly, it's just
doom scrolling. Yeah.
Because there's always going to be critical people, and like, yeah, sure, maybe you can handle it, but maybe they just say something, they just know how to hit the right button somebody and they don't even know it. And you're like, oh, wait a minute. So it's just not even worth it.
Now, I want to switch gears and talk about some of the stuff you've been able to do outside of the ring. I know you've been involved with a lot of charity work and have done stuff outside of the wrestling ring in your community to give back. What are some things that you've been able to do over the years to help out and help others?
Oof, driving crazy. Well, you know what I try to do actually, and like I feel like I have a really good story. I've gone through a lot of like underprivileged schools and different elementary schools, and talk to kids about the importance of staying in school. Because to go back to me, like I chose that I wanted to be a professional wrestler, and that's great and all, but I really was in such a rush to do that I totally neglected my education. And it's not to say that you're necessarily going to need some of those skills for your job, but you are going to need them for life and for general life skills. So I always try to, like, when I'm talking to the kids, kind of go through my story and tell them how, like, I had a goal and yes, I accomplished it. But like, I did go back, even during COVID is when I decided, I'm like, I need to go back and I need to, acquire these skills and just know that I have graduated, so to speak. So, I went back and took literature and math and history. And, I just think my message always to kids is to try to, like, it's okay. It's great to have a goal, but don't just neglect school because of that. Just, go through it, acquire the skills that you need to. And, another thing is, obviously it's a cliche, and maybe it won't be as much of a problem with Gen Z, but the whole stay off drugs thing, because drugs was a huge part of derailing my WWE run. Painkillers were a big thing in pro wrestling, and unfortunately, I got caught in all that madness and had to go to rehab, and it just, I lived through it, but it derailed my life in a way where, I was never able to fully get back to where I was. You know what I mean? And so that's the price I pay, and I always tell kids, that's the price that you would want. You want to avoid those pitfalls. Don't put yourself in those situations if you can. So, I just try to spread that kind of message, man. Those two things, just through my life experience, and because, I can they're cliches big time. I know this is what kids, but I can passionately argue for these things as no, I know you've heard this a long time, but for real. Don't mess with the drugs, stay off that, stay in school, and then finish school, then pursue your dream. You know what I mean? Pursue your dream, but just, go as far as you can with that stuff. I would have been a lot better suited to have waited a little bit longer and just gotten into WWE maybe instead of when I was 20, maybe when I was 21 or 22, and just had a little bit more life experience under my belt rather than going there. I didn't understand even the way the world works. When I went up there, I didn't even understand taxes and how you pay, how you have to pay taxes out of your, all my jobs before that, the taxes were taken out. So, all of this stuff was just, didn't know how to travel or, so it was just, that's the message I kind of go around. And I've gone to a lot of different schools. I've gone to my old school, and I remember in New York, they had me do it for WrestleMania weekend a few years ago. And yeah, man.
Yeah, it's never too late to stop learning, no matter how old you are, no matter your age. It's never too late to stop learning. You always want to keep learning, keep that knowledge growing. And you definitely want to keep your body in shape and to be healthy and stay away from things that will pollute it, essentially. So always want to stay clean, get a good education, stay off the drugs, stay sober. I want to talk.
Just know that drugs can derail you. You know what I mean? Maybe it won't for some people, but when you do that type of stuff, you're putting the possibility on the table that you could, end up really liking this substance and derailing your whole life over it. And exactly. So it's not worth it if you're, if you have the presence of mind to just not even go that route.
Now, I do want to talk about something that I think was just heroic. I mean, you're a real life hero here. You saved your mom from a burning house. That was unbelievable. That's unbelievable. It's so amazing that you're able to do that. Tell me the story of how did this all come about, and how are you able to rescue your mom?
Sorry about that beeping. Okay, yeah. So I just remember what happened is my mom, basically, one of the neighbors was, again, to go back to the drug things, he was tweaking on meth, I believe, or something. And long story short here, basically, he barricaded my mom in her place. And so, I arrived to the scene kind of, I forgot, I think one of my mom's neighbors said something funny was going on. So I came down over here, and I go to knock on the door, and it's locked. And I hear some guy that I don't recognize, and he's talking crazy through the door. And this is how I knew he was on drugs, because it was just madness. You just knew oh, this guy's on some heavy shit. He's not functional, not like a regular human being. So, man, a number of moves had to be made. I remember I was at first thinking about kicking the door down, but I was really worried that if I didn't get the door down, he would pursue aggressive action in there. Because my mom had yelled out at one point. I heard her yell out fire. And basically what it told me is that he's been threatening to set the place on fire. So I was worried if I started kicking the door, that he would start doing that. And if I didn't get the door down, I might be screwed. So luckily I had the presence of mind to call the police. I walked out to the street so he wouldn't hear me, and I called the police and came back. So that way I would at least have backup and, like a battering ram, just to make sure the door got down. And I'm glad that I did, because they get to the scene and like literally they have to take a battering ram to the door like 3 times to get it off its hinges. So it shows you that like I would have had no success getting that door down. And what happened when they started doing it is just like I said, as soon as they started trying to get the door down, he started, you could see a fire start emanating from like a corner window. And so, so that, again, that shows you if I started trying to kick the door down, he would have done that. And then I would be, again, like, I'd have no backup or anything. So again, I'm just going back to how relieved I was that I called them first and didn't try to just handle business myself. But anyway, so what happened is I saw that fire emanate, and they had me at a perimeter at this point, like not involved, but watching. And so once I saw the fire, I was like, screw it. I left the perimeter and I charged over, and I think I grabbed the hose and they broke the window. And it's actually kind of a stupid action because it wasn't really going to help, but I think I stuck the hose in the hole of the window. And then like I walked around to the front or to her front door again. And now I see that, it's taken them a few tries, but they finally get the door off its hinges with the battering ram. And like, I'm thinking that now they can go in and get her, but smoke comes burrowing out. So they start backpedaling. And again, I'm irrational because it's my mother. So I'm seeing them backpedal. I'm like, what are they doing? They need to, they need to go in there, even though there's smoke. But like also too, this is where my adrenaline really spikes, because what happens is I realized by them backing up and how much smoke is coming out of there that she won't even die she's going to die from the smoke inhalation. And like, I need to do something right now. And so that's where that moment happened. I realized she might die. My adrenaline shoots through the roof. I know exactly where her windows are, and there's a tree blocking it. And I run over there and I tell her, she's in this room, break these windows. But again, the tree's covering one of the windows. So I bear hug it, and I freaking basically just kind of wrestle it or tackle it or break it down to the ground to clear the window. And then, they break it. She pops up like a whack-a-mole. and then I scooped her out and pulled her to safety. And, they got him out of there, man. And, he ended up doing some time in jail over that.
You put your life on the line for a very, very important reason, very important cause. And so kudos to you for being able to go through that and handle that as best as possible. I'm so glad your mother was safe and you rescued her.
It was crazy, man.
It
was crazy, man. It was like I was on Good Morning America, I think. I was on I made like the international news. It was pretty amazing.
What is it about giving back to the community and being such, doing these heroic efforts that gives you the most joy?
Well, I mean, I can't even count that one because it's my mom. Like, I feel like anybody, I don't give myself that. I'm glad that it worked out well. And yes, I am a hero in that situation. But at the same time, I feel like anybody with the same situation would have had the same instincts over their mom. Like maybe they wouldn't have had the power to break the tree down or something. But, I just don't think that my actions were so much more heroic than anybody else's would have been for their own mother. You know what I mean? But I don't know. I believe in trying to spread positivity and like just, not being, anywhere you can help or, it doesn't everybody goes about their own business and always thinking about themselves, but it's nice when you can do something and genuinely help somebody, or you can take the time, again, to talk to a kid and provide guidance or save your mother or, or even just like simple stuff, man. Just like being a tall guy, reaching on the top shelf for a woman or helping them put their bag in the overhead bin on an airplane, or, opening the door for women, just all that kind of stuff, man. You know what I mean?
It's the little things that really go a long way. They really help unite us and bring us together. So it's just got to do what you can.
Which we need. We need a lot more of that in this day and age, man.
Definitely. So you've been doing the indies now for a while. I'm guessing you have kept up with the product a little bit. Are there some people any dream opponents you would like to have a match with? I know you mentioned Drew McIntyre earlier. Is there anybody you would like to wrestle against?
Well, I wouldn't say that there's anybody like currently that I'm dying to necessarily work, but I will say I've become an Obafemi mark. I think he's pretty cool. I like the I mean, everybody's loving him at this point, but he really is dope. I don't understand anybody who doesn't like him. How can you not like that whole?
Yeah, it's over. People like it and they're into it.
And I don't know. It's just great presence, man. Like they say, the aura, man. Definitely, he's got like the aura and all that stuff. So, but I'm not saying he'd be a dream opponent. When you say dream opponent, I always go to guys not in this era. I think of like Andre the Giant, for instance. Okay. And I always bring up Andre because Andre would be such an awesome guy to work because he's Andre the Giant, and like every piece of offense he gives you, you could sell to the absolute max. And you can't just do that with anybody because it would be stupid and not make sense. But with him, you could do it, and you would want to do it because it is him. You know what I mean? You'd want to be that giving. So, and also Bret Hart, obviously, because he's the hitman, and he was also kind of a huge influence to me. Like I loved Bret and Shawn around that time in '92 when they were both turning into singles and really kind of showing people what wrestling could be as opposed to what it was, which is, with them, it was much more of an athletic and technical contest, which I enjoyed much more than the, like the punching and kicking of Rock and Steve Austin or, Ultimate Warrior Hulk Hogan.
Yeah, I think wrestling definitely could use more variety between bigger guys. I think the Giants, I feel like we don't see a lot of Giants anymore these days. I feel like you want to have some of those guys around, and you got to have your technical stuff as well. So I think a good mixture of both, I feel like, is sorely missing. You got to have that around. Yeah,
they've almost gone too much the other way where there's way too little big guys now, probably. You know what I mean? Or I don't know if that's necessarily true. I guess maybe if you look at AEW a little bit, but I'm also not going to be the guy who's fighting against smaller guys being in the business, because again, size isn't everything, but again, I do think in pro wrestling there's always going to be a certain, people know it's a work, so sometimes you want to have the guys at least look like if it was a real life fight they could beat your ass, essentially, as opposed to people know it's a work and then they see a guy and they think that they could kick his ass, essentially. So to me that's the only problem sometimes, and that just goes into how you book the talent. That's why I'm sure a lot of people are giving Tony so much flack about Darby Allin being the world champion.
Has any of the big companies reached out to you about doing something? Have you thought about maybe making a return at some point?
I mean, I would love to, but at this point I just I don't even, I definitely hope for more opportunities, but I'm just not seeing WWE. I'd love to do the Royal Rumble comeback thing, but I just feel like it's been so long now that I'm sure that there was still a time where even a few years ago where it might have been cool, but I just figure that at this point, Triple H would kind of think oh, it's been too long. People aren't going to remember. And as far as Tony, I don't know if Tony is even a fan of my work or not. I would assume probably not, based on the type of stuff he does like. But, and I did try to go backstage there, but I was never followed up with. And so, I was just kind of that was kind of, I don't know, it was very unmotivating to me when I didn't get a follow back from somebody I knew about just showing up to the AEW show. So I just kind of wipe my hands with it, man. And I'm just doing my own thing. And whatever, if a cool opportunity comes along, I'm definitely game for it. But I'm not looking at WWE or AEW. It's that's why when I wrestled Joey Janela at the GCW show, I took that opportunity very serious because again, I've had such a shortage of good opportunities over the last few years. Like I worked with NWA, which was cool. I had some great matches there, maybe some of the best of my career, but Billy Corgan just did not, I feel like, appreciate me. So
when you're at these conventions and making these appearances, it has to feel good knowing that people remember you and they come up to you and they say like, you were my childhood, and they asked to be put in the Masterlock. I mean, it has to feel good knowing that, people still care about you and remember you and all that stuff.
Oh yeah. Like WrestleCon was real cool this year, because it really was, there was a ton of that. And, it was cool because I was hanging out with Carlito quite a bit, and Carlito's obviously much more recent than me, and, he'll get noticed more, but I was being noticed just as much right with him, which was just kind of cool. It's like, all right, cool. People do remember. And just to go back to the Masterlock thing, like, yeah, that's another one of the perks about that hold that I would have never thought about back early on, but it's a great, having a hold like that gives you a unique opportunity with fans where you can take a picture with them in your finishing hold. And so people really kind of get off on that. Like typically if I do it to one person, more people, they'll see it and they're going to want to do it. And so, it's not always the most favorable when, their hygiene isn't up to par and stuff, but, I don't turn anybody down unless they look like they're just too big in the shoulders or neck, and it's just not going to work. That's the only time I'm like, or if they ask to put me in it. I don't like when people put me in it. No.
Well, Chris, I want to say thank you for coming on to Wrestling with Heart. It means a lot to me and to my listeners and viewers that are watching this on YouTube. Where can people find out more about you on social media? And if there's anything you want to plug, feel free.
Yeah, I would say follow me on Instagram at ChrisMasters310. If there's any of the social media platforms I kind of invest my time in and post regularly, it's there. I make sure that, typically all my shows and stuff will be posted, so if I'm coming to a town near you. And I do go on the Twitter every once in a while, Chris Adonis, just to promote stuff. But, I'd say Instagram is probably your best bet. And, obviously for bookings, you can always reach out to me, bookings, appearances, signings, seminars, masterpiece83@gmail.com.
All right. Well, thanks again, Chris, and you're more than welcome to come back.
Thank you, Stanley. Appreciate the time.
All right, take care.
All right, brother.
This is Wrestling with Heart. I hope you found this podcast to be informative and entertaining. If you did, please hit the subscribe button and look out for the next edition.